Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Scouted Football Podcast with me, Joe Donoghue. We've got a club-specific episode today, once again, discussing one of Serie A's most famous and well-supported clubs all around the world. It is AS Roma from the capital, the Giallorossi, and I'm very pleased to welcome Ed Stratmann as my guest this week. Ed is a football writer specialising on clubs such as Roma and AS Monaco in particular, and has a really diverse profile of tactical and analysis pieces. He's worked with all the big names: Roma, Arsenal, Monaco, Y-Scout, the Bundesliga, Goal, plenty more, and I'm really pleased for him to join me today. Ed, thank you for your time. How are you, and how are things in the world of AS Roma?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Joe. It's great to be on the podcast, and yeah, things are pretty interesting at Roma at the moment. Obviously, with Mourinho being appointed recently, and the excellent start to the season they've enjoyed. So it's apart from the loss on the weekend, but everything's pretty positive at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, the teams start the season with 5 wins from 5 in all competitions, and then the week that we come to record the podcast, they lose 3-2 to Verona. So a little bit of a curse there, the Scouted Football Podcast. But yeah, it seems to have been going quite well so far under José Mourinho, who has obviously taken the Roma job, much to, would I say, many people's surprise, but I think such a high-profile job after the jobs that he's held in England is probably tallies with that. But just over the last 5 years or so, if anybody hasn't been familiar with Roma, if anybody hasn't sort of followed the progress of the club, what's it been like in terms of the managerial turnover, the styles of play, whether there's been any specific transfer policies or just long-running themes in general? What's it been like sort of pre-Mourinho?
Yeah, well, it's certainly been pretty. It's always with Roma, the fans. I'll always tell you, there's certainly lots of ups and downs and changes and axe swinging, and everything transfers ins out. So it's pretty full drama, as many of us know. But yeah, so actually started writing for Roma's website about 5.5 years ago, when Rudy Garcia was sacked and Spalletti took over after that. So yeah, the Garcia era started quite well with a 10-game winning streak, and they got a couple of second place finishes, but it's sort of obviously by the final campaign, why that came around, he just sort of the wheels started falling off, even though he had Salah was brought in, that's his last season, Dzeko, Szczesny, and you had people like Digne as well on loan, and Rudiger, and obviously El Shawari and Perotti had recently joined before he left too. So yeah, so he ended up getting the sack, I think, in the January of 2016, I believe, and then Spalletti took over from then till the end of the season, and obviously Spalletti returning to the team after he won their last major trophy, the 2008 Coppa Italia. So yeah, that was a nice little team, that one, with De Rossi and Pizarro. Obviously, Totti was at the club, and Vucinic, Acquiani, those sort of players. So, yeah, he came in and sort of got them back on track ahead. Sort of, I think they ended up finishing that season third. And then obviously the 2016-17 season was really, really good. That was probably one of my favourite seasons, covering the team, where we got a record points haul of 87, but still lost the title to Juventus, just a formidable force that they are. But yeah, so obviously, yeah, that was around the time. Yeah, obviously Allison came to the club then, and we actually lost Pjanic that time as well. So, and one of my favourite Roma players is sort of Adam Ljajic, who was always fun to watch. Never really the best player, but he was always fun, sort of wispy dribbler, and always creating things and finding space. So, and that year we had obviously had Dzeko winning the Capo Canonieri with his 29 goals, and pretty good in the Europa League too. And that was Totti's final season as well, which was the end of his 25 years with Roma. So he had a memorable last game where they came back to win 3-2 against Genoa, with Perotti scoring a late one to seal the deal. And I think obviously Pellegrini scored in that game, who's obviously went to Monaco and now he's left again. But yeah, he was only 16 at the time. So yeah, that was a pretty fitting way to end for the great man himself. So And then yeah, it just didn't really end as well with the Spalletti and Totti issues because Spalletti just put him on the bench quite a lot, which he made it under no uncertain terms he wasn't happy about. So yeah, it was pretty fun season, that one. So we had Rudiger and Emerson really came on that year, and Chesney in goal, and Allison was keeping in Europe, and yeah, Manolas was pretty impressive, and we had even Vermaelen. Not that he was super great, he was at the team. Rajan Angelin, Stratmann, De Rossi, young Gerson, who's now obviously at Marseille now. So, and the front line was pretty formidable with Totti and Salah and Dzeko and El Shawari and Perotti. So, and another one of my favourites who unfortunately left Roma earlier than I would have liked was Paredes, who's obviously at PSG now. But yeah, he was always just really cool to watch whenever he came on with his sort of line breaking passing and just the ease of which he moved the ball, and that gave tempo to the attacks and just really was smooth dictating the play. So yeah, but obviously Spalletti, that was him done after that season too, because he just obviously the way he was treated with the Toddy situation, and he felt that he was just sort of constantly under pressure about it and treated harshly, even though he was just doing what he believed was best for the team. So he was gone at the end of that season, despite the amazing achievement. And then we went to the Eusebio Di Francesco era. Obviously, he was a former Roma player, part of the Scudetto winning team 20 years ago now. And he started off pretty well. Brought back Lorenzo Pellegrini from he'd been here with him for a couple of years with Sassuolo, so he brought him back to Roma. Obviously, who he played for as a boy as well. So that was a great sort of partnership to rekindle when he came back, and yeah, led the team to third in that year, and it was a pretty memorable season, really, where we had the magnificent Champions League run, making it to the semi final against Liverpool, getting out of a group that we had Atletico Madrid and Chelsea in it, and obviously the most famous of all, the Barcelona comeback from 3-0 down, and then 4-1 down from the first leg, 3 goals down, and then they won 3-0 at home after he changed the shape to 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1. So I'm sure you probably remember that one too pretty well.
Oh yeah, the Costas Manolas goal. I think that was one which still sends shivers down the spine, doesn't it? It's that was a fantastic year for comebacks, wasn't it? Oh, to be fair, those few years in the Champions League were fantastic for comebacks. I remember the first leg. I was in the car, I was driving, I was sort of just listening to the commentary, and I was thinking, yeah, there's no way that Roma are going to come back from this. So you do realistically think that, oh well, it's game over. And then I remember watching that 3-0 game and thinking, this is just incredible stuff. This is vintage Champions League action. But yeah, you do. I think just you rattling through those names there and the players and the different teams, it is easy to forget that over the past 5 years or so, even though 5 years is a very small time in football, there have been quite a few, really established, very statesman-like players that have come through at Roma, or not come through, but have passed through the training ground and the Olimpico, because they've, the names. I mean, Salah, Dzeko, Shaarawy, obviously Totti, De Rossi, and even some of the managers as well. Di Francesco. Spalletti. I completely forgot that the Spalletti was at the beginning of sort of that time period that I asked you about. And obviously there was the Ranieri period, which followed Di Francesco, and then Fonseca, who obviously reached the semi-finals of the Europa League last season. But in terms of, I mean, what, 5 managers in roughly around 5 seasons, it's been pretty turbulent in that department. But there has been, I mean, maybe not success in terms of the silverware, but there's definitely been sort of relative success in terms of achieving, going far in competitions and stuff like that, and obviously the runners up position in 2017. But of course, José Mourinho is there now, and it's been box office so far, to say the least, which you can always count on with Mourinho. There's the video of him sort of tucking into a pizza on the train back from Salerno. There was the running down the touchline in the final minute of the game after that last minute winner against Sassuolo. And it's been, for Mourinho's standards, quite entertaining football. There's 3 goals a game at the very least, I think, has been sort of the average. Even when Roma have lost, as they did last weekend to Verona, it was 3-2, and Davide Faraone scored an absolute fantastic strike for the opponents. So it's been it's been fun to follow from afar, to say the least. Is that what it's been like to follow from your perspective? What has been sort of the insider's view?
Yeah, it's been fun, and it's given a lot of positivity back to the club. And not that Fonseca really did too badly. Like I was quite a big fan of his philosophy, obviously at pre-hand at Shakhtar before he joined as well. So I was impressed with his work, and considering the situations, the pandemic, coming to a club like Roma, obviously people doubting him, wondering if he's the right man for the job. But considering the situation he came in, I think he did pretty well. So many injuries he had to deal with as well, and he obviously changed the shape from his favoured 4-2-3-1 to the 3-2-4-1 or 3-4-3, whatever you want to call it. And he obviously Pellegrini really, and Spinazzola and Karsdorp and Mkhitaryan, they really elevated their games again to another level. And he gave plenty of young guys a chance as well, like Darbo and Calafiori, VR. So I just sort of didn't know what to expect with Mourinho, because I was impressed with Fonseca considering the conditions he had to deal with. Most of the time, never had a full strength team. Obviously, Roma's pretty bad financially for a lot of the time as well, with spending big and not making Champions League. So yeah, Mourinho's, it's been sort of create a lot of buzz around the team as well, which has just been just great. People a lot more interested in the club, and same with obviously the Tammy Abraham signing sort of generated a lot of interest as well. But yeah, they've been it's sort of hard to fault them. Obviously, the loss on the weekend, it's really hard. Sort of the players are clearly pretty jaded after they have the international break, then the Conference League, and there's sort of 3 games every 7 days. So it's been pretty impressive to say the least so far. Obviously, people love seeing things like the pizza on the train. He just looks really cheerful on that, and then the touchline run, just sort of reminiscent of the one he did for Porto versus Manchester United all those years ago in the Champions League. So that sort of just generates happiness, and yeah, but also a lot is expected of him in a way as well, because he's a pretty legendary coach, and he's achieved so much throughout his career. So, but also it's sort of tempered with a bit of, oh, are we sure he's really what you want after he hasn't won a trophy in 5 years, and how the Man United, the Chelsea, the Tottenham, how that's all gone, hasn't been so good. But yeah, it's going to be a work in progress. I think obviously need time to sort of get his squad depth going, and maybe get them transfers and players that he wants. I think he was pretty upset he didn't get Xhaka, obviously, which would have been good to add some to bolster the midfield. But yeah, you listen to him speak, and he's pretty realistic, and he knows that Roma's a bit of a team where we've won. I think they won 6 of the first 6, if you include the last Conference League game. And he said, look, it's with Roma, it's like you can't go from euphoria to depression with one loss. And that's sort of how sometimes he obviously feels the media's reacting, like, oh, wow, you're the best thing ever, and then you're the worst after that loss on the weekend. So, yeah, it's going to be a long-term project. He's got a 3-year contract, so he's just being realistic and trying to sort of downplay the expectations, and just sort of wanting him and the team to grow in time, and let him instill his philosophy just sort of slowly.
Yeah, I was going to say, because obviously Chelsea Part 2 sort of ended acrimoniously, and then Manchester United, I mean, obviously he won the Europa League there, which was perhaps not the standard of trophy that Man United fans have become accustomed to, and obviously the way that Spurs ended was obviously very dissatisfying from his perspective, from the fans' perspective, I think, yeah, he's kind of left a bit of an impression and not the one you'd want there. So I was quite curious to find what the perception is of him in Italy, considering that his last job in Italy was with Inter, and it was, with that hugely successful team of around 10, 11 years ago. It's curious because I was looking through the team that he had with Inter, and it was a very, I don't want to say veteran littered, but it was a very it was a team of players who were very much at their peak, or sort of not in a decline, but they were getting to a point where you wouldn't offer them a new 5-year deal. Put it that way. I think off the top of my head, there were only Mario Balotelli, who he obviously had a particular soft spot for, and Davide Santon, who were the only under 23 players that he quite regularly used at Inter. It doesn't seem as though that'll be the case at Roma, though, based on sort of the first few games. As you mentioned, it's actually 6 wins from the first 6 if you count that win against CSK Sofia in the Conference League. But just in terms of the perception of Mourinho, in terms of whether you feel as though for the young players at Roma, it's a good appointment. Is he perhaps a little bit too divisive? Is it too early to tell? Is it something which potentially he could? Is it last chance saloon for him in a big job?
Yeah, it could be. It depends sort of which sporting director maybe is in charge of the given club. Obviously, with Tiago Pinto now, the sporting director at Roma, the Portuguese connection, obviously helped, and that was probably a big reason why he came, because and also it's very good for the profile of the team. But yeah, it's Roma has got some pretty promising young players. So obviously Zaniolo is the best of them, but yeah, Calafiori and Perez is still quite young. Darbo, Bove, Zalewski, some of the guys we've already touched upon. So he'll probably have to use a lot of the young players, I would say, just because there's not a huge pool of players. But yeah, I think he'll do all right. But it's just his reputation was still in Italy. I've heard some pretty interesting things from James Horncastle, obviously Italian football journalist specialist, and he was mentioning how it's, even though despite what's happened in England, with the Chelsea, Man U, and Spurs, and the falling out with players and not developing the playing styles and being seen as a bit outdated and criticising regularly various things, referees getting fines, unhappy with his teams himself for not getting players, but his reputation in Italy is still very high, with obviously the Inter treble and just sort of the amazing job he did there, and his stock is still up there, so he's still pretty revered. So the respect's there for his previous achievements, and I suppose the start sort of vindicated Roma for getting him, and vindicated their opinions of holding him in high esteem still, because he did some pretty amazing tactical achievements, obviously with the Barcelona game and in the final of the Champions League, and just getting the best out of that team you mentioned with all those experienced heads, which obviously helped him to achieve what he wanted to do. And so, yeah, with Roma, he's sort of, obviously the last few years have seen him use that sort of 4-2-3-1 base model, and he's continued that with Roma, which has been pretty interesting, with a nice array of players. And be nice to get Spinazzola back at fullback, but we signed Vigna, who's from Palmeiras, who's won the Copa Libertadores, and he's started well, even though he's missed last week with an injury. And obviously, if we can keep Karsdorp fit, he's pretty amazing fullback as well, who was signed initially and didn't really make headway, and then had a loan away, and he's come back, and Fonseca's really got the best out of him. So, and obviously Abraham and Pellegrini, just a really, really quality number 10 and striker. So, and Pellegrini especially, he's just been on fire with, and he's noted as much, saying how much he's loving playing for Mourinho, and there's a really special feeling at the club like he's never felt before. And so he's really excited, and he's the top scoring midfielder in Europe. He's sort of running the show, and he drops deep, and so you sometimes get like a bit of a tilt, so it becomes more of a 4-3-3 to overload the midfield and connect the attacks a bit more, and let the 3 strikers sort of stretch the three forwards, stretch the opposition, and then he can come up forward and get in space between the lines, and he's exceptional at making that channel run between the fullback and centre back of the opposition, which you've seen multiple times, and that's delivered goals already. So it's looking really promising so far. And then Veretout, who got 10 goals last year, and Cristante are going to be the midfield pairing. So Cristante is more of the controller, dictate the tempo, drop back between the centre backs if need be when they're passing out from the back. And Veretout is the man that will make you runs into the box. And just having Abraham as that target man who can do a range of things, flick-ons, nod-downs, great sort of reference point for goal kicks, like against on the weekend, Verona, they press man-to-man, so it was pretty hard to build out from the back. So he was a great outlet to go long for Patricio, who's been sort of magical in goal as well. He made some incredible stops. And so we're hopeful Patricio is going to be that man to sort of stabilise the goalkeeping position as well. So, and then Mkhitaryan, who's obviously, he was one of the men that had an issue with Mourinho at United, and they've obviously patched things up, and he's playing and looking good. And Shamuradov's a new signing from Genoa, and he's sort of started quite positively. And then, Zaniolo as well. Just not the best start to the year, but he's going to need time after those injuries. But overall, and then obviously defending, it's reasonably, Mourinho style, pretty compact, sort of mid-block, 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-2-2-2, sort of just trying to condense the centre and stay nice and compact and discipline from that base to launch counters and press when certain triggers arise, like the wide passes, players dropping deep, poor passes, touches, so that kind of thing. So he's looking pretty good so far. I'm sort of pretty happy with what he's done at this current date.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Lorenzo Pellegrini there, because he's been, I mean, in terms of Italian football alone, he's been one of my favourite players, because he's just such a silky player. I think he combines the fact that he's quite a tall player for the position he plays with just an effortless control and deftness with the ball. Really, really enjoyed seeing him in a variety of positions when he was playing for Italy's under-21s. But I did want to go a little bit deeper on Tammy Abraham, because it's a transfer which somewhat breaks the mold a little bit. You don't often see it. I mean, apart from Fikayo Tomori going to Milan, you don't often see English players going for big money to foreign clubs. It's often that English players will go for small fees when they're sort of teenagers, rather than when they're getting into those peak years. So I think it's taken some bottle for Abraham to say, you know what, I'm gonna chance my arm. But it's been going fantastically so far. I think yesterday, and we're recording ahead of the Udinese game, but yesterday I checked sort of the underlying numbers for Abraham, and he was doing fantastically well. I think he was, across the entirety of Serie A, second highest for non-penalty XG, second highest for expected assists, second highest number of touches in the opposition penalty area. And this is a player who, he hasn't scored bagfuls so far, but the building blocks are there, the fundamentals are there. It's exactly what Mourinho will have wanted from his new striker, and it shows that he's linking up well with his new teammates already, and I think that's indicative of a player who is, first of all, immensely talented, perhaps underrated and unappreciated in England, and is one which is certainly going to endear himself to the Roma support if he continues to perform the way he has been. They were just numbers that I plucked from Serie A. I'm sure that in the Europa Conference League, there'll be similar levels of performance, if not higher, given the caliber of opposition. There was, I think he got 2 assists and a goal in his first 2 Serie A appearances. So it's not just the underlying numbers; it's very much the standout figures as well. So, I think a lot of people might be curious to know the dynamic up front, given that Edin Dzeko has left. And over the past few years, if you weren't familiar with Roma too well, you'd still be able to say, oh well, Edin Dzeko plays for Roma. He's an identifiable figure. But why is Tammy Abraham not simply just a Dzeko replacement? He's a lot more than that, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's a lot more mobile and athletic. And Dzeko is really good technically and really good with his back to goal as well. So, but yeah, it's good. It's good. He's a good target reference point outlet, which Dzeko was, but he's just a little bit more agile. He probably suits the counter attacking style when we need to play that really well because he's so fast and he's sort of got long arms and he can hold like push off defenders really well, and he's got that acceleration, can beat the man, and he's just got a really nice array of finishing too, which Dzeko was criticised for sometimes being a bit wasteful, even though he was obviously a class act. But yeah, he's got a nice sort of armory of ways to score goals and ways to impact matches. So he's and obviously with the aerial prowess and Roma played pretty narrow front four, so they're all in close proximity, sort of half space to half space. So with him able to combine in close with those guys or win headers or with combine with the feet, it sort of pulls out defenses and creates little gaps for Roma to exploit in behind in central areas. Obviously, or the width comes from the fullback, sort of spread the play and then attack the box. So he's sort of he's just crying out for a move like this to sort of just show again just how good he can be. And obviously, he still scored 30 goals in the last couple of years for Chelsea and scored a ton on loan at places like Bristol and Swansea and Villa. So he's just a really impressive outlet and talisman. So and yeah, he's got quick reaction. So with rebounds to off the goalkeeper and just he's very instinctive in the box as well. So obviously with set pieces so important, he'll probably be pretty useful with those two, and Pellegrini's deliveries, which have already been beneficial in terms of assists. To think of the Cristante goal is really clever little set piece routine. So in terms of him coming to the team, it's really really exciting, and he'll just add to hopefully what a force Roma can develop into. And obviously, with a player like that, his ability to win fouls, drag defenders out of shape, pin them to make room for others, and so he can being able to come short and connect or go in behind and make runs is quite a handful for defenders to deal with. So it's a really good weapon to have. I'm glad Roma have got the deal over the line. And just I noticed you had some really really good stats there. So I sort of obviously went through Y Scout and did a little bit of research on Roma's start to the season. It's actually making pretty much backing up Abraham's, so extending on that because they're third for goals, third for expected goals, got the fourth best for expected goals against, and fourth least shots faced. So they're doing pretty well on those aspects. And for a team like Mourinho, they're sixth highest for the passes per defensive action, which sort of shows how often you recover the ball. And they're fifth for possession, which you probably think they might be a bit lower. And third, obviously, for most corners. So they're playing. That's obviously helps when you have such a good deliverer like Pellegrini, and they're first for through passes and first for key passes. So that obviously helps with those little breakaways and people like Pellegrini able to unlock defenses to someone like an Abraham. So yeah, that's sort of it's been a good perfect partnership so far.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're in for a very big season from Tammy Abraham. I think injuries permitting. I think everything that you touched on there, it's very much set up for a very successful campaign.
Mm.
And I suppose looking ahead to this season, with other players in that squad, you touched on Nicolò Zaniolo before, and that might be a name which people might be hearing for the first time in quite a while, considering that he's had two pretty nasty injuries. I think there was about two cruciate ligament ruptures
Mm.
over the past 24 months, 2 years, 18 months sort of period, which is quite that's going to take its toll on any young player. But for somebody who relies on sort of that initial burst of acceleration and then the ball carrying through lines and being able to hold off challenges, they can be devastating. So, I mean, I haven't seen very much of Zaniolo this season. I know his minutes have been not limited, but he hasn't been as influential as a Pellegrini or an Abraham, for example. What are the early signs? Is it potential that we could be seeing maybe a comeback season for him? Because I know he got sent off in the first game of the season, which it's not. I mean, Mourinho's probably not the manager to burn your bridges with straight away. I think it's fair to say,
Yeah.
but where do you sort of rate Zaniolo's importance in 2021-22? Because still a young player, still under 23, still somebody who I think can stake a claim to be an important member of the Italian national team. Is I'm waffling on here because I really want to see him do well again, because he was such a vibrant player before his injuries.
Yeah, you're spot on. Well, he's just got back into the Italy squad for with Mancini just in the last international window, which is positive news. But yeah, he's after that just quality debut against Real Madrid under obviously Di Francesco was in charge then, and he sort of really took everyone by storm there. And he had a great game, and he got a double in a Champions League game against Porto to give Roma a win. And just the excitement about him, just a player like that. He's so versatile. Like you can play him as an 8 if you really wanted to, a 10, a winger, a false 9. He's sort of got the physique to play anywhere and the technique to play anywhere. So yeah, barring those injuries, he could be sort of at a very high level right now. So yeah, so with players like with that, it's just we're just hoping Roma can hold on to him if he reaches that potential, which obviously we hope he can. And with us, as you mentioned, losing all those amazing players over the years to the big teams, but yeah, he's just got a crazy blend of strength, balance, speed, shooting, dribbling, and he's just a powerful athlete who can just bully defenders back to goal, and he can run into depth as well. And sort of the sky is pretty much the limit for him if he, like you say, can stay fit. So, but this season we've sort of just seen glimpses of what he can offer, some dangerous runs, some positive sort of shooting moments, some good movement, but he just needs some minutes and time to just get that continuity back and get into a rhythm, and obviously adjust to another new manager at Roma, which is probably not ideal for all these players having to change systems so regularly. But the future's looking good. I know that there was a slight bit of criticism for his lack of tracking back for a couple, especially against Verona on the weekend. But sometimes it's sort of a systemic thing where you want to keep those players higher up, ready for that first outlet when you can break, sort of almost cheat. But when it doesn't come off, it doesn't look so good, obviously. But yeah, it's exciting to see what will happen this season, despite the slightly rocky start. But yeah, well, hopefully Mourinho can get the best out of him.
Yeah, and just finally moving on to sort of the players even younger than the likes of Tammy Abraham and Nicolò Zaniolo, and I'm quite pleased that we actually got Abraham in, because this being the Scouted Football podcast, focus is 23 and under, and I think Tammy Abraham turns 24 in about a week's time, so we just managed to get him in here, Ed. But on those players even younger in the Primavera setup, which is Italy's equivalent of under-19s football. Roma's Primavera side finished fourth last season, which is a very good finish, but it's even better when you consider that was just 2 points off the title. Primavera football, you often see you often see players go from there to to Serie B, or in previous seasons we've seen some players such as Samuele Mulatieri go from Inter's under-19 side to the Eerste Divisie in the Netherlands. This season, Sebastiano Esposito from Inter has gone to Switzerland with FC Basel. So it's quite it seems as though it's very good. It's a very good league in terms of development. But for Roma in particular, there are a few young players, still teenagers in fact, who have been playing or over the past few years have played regularly with the Primavera setup, who are now somewhat on the fringes. And Ed, earlier you said about how Mourinho perhaps will have to draw on some of these younger players just because the limitations of his squad and just simply not having the numbers to be able to rely on so many Diego Militos. And there are a few that you picked out. Nicolò Zalewski being one, Eduardo Bove being another, Darbo. There's quite a few who are names that I keep seeing popping up, who I haven't really had a great chance to watch, but to see the progress that they've made sort of outside of Roma suggests that perhaps Mourinho might not be so reluctant to rely on them.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Darbo was to start with him. He came in at the end of last season, did some really really good work in the Europa League in that pretty memorable run, which ended against Manchester United, obviously after beating Ajax and Shakhtar, and it was a good little run. And he got a chance to prove himself in the midfield, and he did really well. He was fundamentally sound. He did his job pretty perfectly on both sides of the ball, and just really his defensive sort of tenacity and grit was impressive. And he was just showed very good judgment and just good positional awareness. And he did really well in the derby against Lazio, which was sort of a big stage for a player like that to be thrust into. And you really couldn't fault him against the likes of Luis Alberto. He's just a force to be reckoned with as a number 10, and he's just a talent. So getting in that experience at such a high level at the end of the season, and Fonseca to give him that chance, he really really relished it. So he was certainly one that Mourinho, if he wanted to call upon, would be worthwhile, especially with the busy season, and Cristante and Veretout probably going to need a bit of a rest. So Diawara and VR will probably get a go as well. VR is probably someone we haven't touched on. Not that he's a Roma youth product, but yeah, he's just a really nice passer. Keeps things ticking over nicely. Really showed his quality under Fonseca last year, and at the second half of the season was one of the sort of key men. So yeah, he hasn't really got much of a run yet. So we're not sure what Mourinho is going to do with the midfield there. So we'll just have to wait and see how many more minutes these kind of guys get, if any. So, but obviously we'll move on to Calafiori next. He was another that got some valuable minutes last year. Sort of tall defender, good in the air, won a lot of headers, nice crosser, good on the cutbacks, good surging runs forward. Still needs a little bit of refining, obviously, but yeah, he's probably one to look out for in the future. He's had some injuries coming through, so that probably has halted his progress a little bit. But I remember there was one amazing 25-yard strike that really sort of caught everyone's attention last year. So he's probably a man to look out for with some injuries in the fullback roles. He's getting minutes now, and he'll probably play tomorrow too. So that'll only benefit his development as well. And next on the list there is Bove, and he did some good things in pre-season. He probably won't get huge minutes this year, but he looked like he's definitely a nice passer, moves the ball well, sort of tenacious with his pressing and tackling. Quite a smooth player. I liked what I saw from him. Definitely impressed Mourinho as well in the pre-season, which got some very good work in. So he's probably one that will probably be more on the fringe of the team with the quality they have in the squad, but might be one for a loan in January maybe to get some more experience, and maybe the same with Zalewski, who like you said, 10 goals last season, newly capped Polish international, very very talented Polish midfielder who can. That's good to have one that can score goals and do a lot of good things. Obviously, with the link to Poland helps because he's Italian, grew up there. So Boniek, one of the more famous Polish players, knows his family well. So he sort of probably got some plenty of good guidance from him. growing up and is sort of friends with the family. So he'll be one to keep an eye on. He might get some minutes, these guys in the Cups and the Conference League. So obviously it's hard with Mourinho, like you said, he's sort of pretty results based. So whether he wants to risk giving these younger guys too many chances or he trusts them fully will be intriguing to see. When you obviously it's hard to get minutes with the likes of El Shawari, Shamuradov, Abraham, Pellegrini, Zaniolo, Perez, and then these kind of guys. But yeah, I'm just hoping they can come on and we can have a few surprises from these young guys this year, and they can really show what they're made of.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there just towards the end that Zalewski is a newly capped Poland international. You've also got Ibrahima Darbo, who you spoke about to begin with, who's a Gambian international, and Calafiori, who is currently with Italy's under-21 setup. So there's quite a lot there to suggest that there's something which is going on at Roma in terms of the development of these players, and yeah, I think we can be. I mean, we're not exactly expectant to see these players playing a serious first team role just yet. I mean, a lot of them are still 19, 20 years old, and especially in Bove's case with players such as Gonzalo Villar in front of him, who you're right we didn't really touch on, but is a fantastic tempo setting midfielder, I think. But yeah, I think there's plenty to be encouraged about with Roma this season. Hopefully we'll see a real title race at the top of Serie A this season. I'm fairly sure that given the troubles that Juventus have had to begin with this season, that I think we'll also see, similar to last year, a good title race, and maybe Roma will be up there. Who knows? José Mourinho maybe ending that trophy drought, but. Ed, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for joining me on the Scouted Football podcast. I'm sure we'll chat again at some point. But for anybody who isn't familiar with your writing or familiar with anywhere that you work, is there anywhere that you'd like to plug? Any websites? Any particular pieces?
Yeah, it's just at Edward Stratmann's the Twitter handle. You can pretty much find all of my work there and articles. There'll be something on Lorenzo Pellegrini actually coming up on the Roma website this week for anyone that's interested. Obviously, it just catalogues his rise and development as a versatile, multifaceted midfielder who can play a range of roles through the years since coming back under Di Francesco, and how he was developed into a really, really impressive, from a Mezzala to a more of a trequartista, into that number 10 role, which he just took to the next level under Fonseca, and he's just doing that now with Mourinho as well, being exceptional. So yeah, that's pretty much where you can find my work on Twitter. And yeah, thanks Joe for having me on. It's been great to chat all things Roma, and hopefully, like you say, we can have some success around the corner with Mourinho at the helm.
Yeah. I think we're all hoping to see a storyline unfold, if nothing else. But yes, that's all from us on the Scouted Football podcast this week. If you haven't already, do check out Scouted Football Unfiltered, which is a new 30-minute snippet from Lou Davies and Stephen Ganavis on our Scouted Football Patreon. Just 30-minute discussions, unedited, of those two guys discussing what's been happening in the world of football that week. But yes, that's all from me, Joe Donahue. This has been the Scouted Football podcast discussing AS Roma with Ed Stratmann. Thanks very much. Stay safe. Bye for now. For player profiles, in-depth features, and exclusive interviews, visit sfhandbook.com to learn more about the best young football players in the world.